it's hard not to take blatant disobedience personally, at least for me. When the boys don't listen, when they do things they have never been allowed to do, when they whine over and over about the same thing, when they refuse to get along with each other, or when they don't seem to appreciate the many, many things I've done for them, I have a hard time remembering it isn't a lack of love for me or a lack of respect for me. It is simply childhood taking over. Thanks to Cindy, I have a new level of appreciation for God's amazing, extravagant, endless love for us. Why God ever allowed the earth to be repopulated with humans following Noah's flood is beyond me. Yet somehow, God is able to love all of us disobedient, wandering, rebellious, ungrateful brats so much that God keeps pouring out that love and keeps reaching out to us, encouraging us to be better than we were just the moment before. God's love is so strong that God continues to see our potential and continues to hope that each of us will find our way home to the security of God's love so that we'll be able to reach a bit of that potential. I really don't think that our Good Shepherd is sitting around making notes in a book that contains all the naughty behavior from the beginning of time. I think our shepherd is too busy pouring out love and inspiration to have time to keep those records of all our wrong turns. It takes a lot of energy to keep track of a wandering herd. If the focus was on punishment, God would never get through dispensing timeouts and supervising groundings before it was time to start searching for lost sheep again. Instead, God just keeps pouring out love, singing our heart songs, telling us how magnificently we are each created, waiting patiently for us to hear that familiar voice again and begin to make our way back toward the fold. This particular gospel reading about the Good Shepherd contains the very serious commitment that our Good Shepherd, our Jesus, willingly put his life on the line for us. His own very real human life, which was his to do with as he pleased, was of less importance to him than saving us. He'd been doing a lot of teaching and preaching, calling people to live the way God had designed, with each of us loving God, loving ourselves, and loving others in a pure, generous way. He had been trying and trying to turn all the people around to this better way of living. Rather than retract all that teaching when the going got very, very tough, he saw it through to the end, even reaching out in love to the criminals hanging on either side of him as he drew near to his last breath. That is love. To care so much about us that even imminent death doesn't stop the caring. To be so serious about sharing God's love for all people that he was willing to die as a final testimony to that love. What an amazing, wonderful, better than Good Shepherd we have. Not only does Jesus pour out himself for all of us, our reading includes another piece of amazing information. We aren't his only sheep. He loves others too. People outside this flock. Verse 16 says, I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. Imagine that. Jesus doesn't just love us, but all kinds of others as well. It's pretty easy for us to draw lines around the different groups of people, creating well-defined groups of those we love and value the most, those who are a little bit valuable, and those we couldn't even be bothered to care about in the least. Not so with Jesus. He wants all of us to be drawn into the single flock. There's that pesky unity concept again. It must be pretty important to Jesus for him to have talked about it enough for it to get recorded more than once in the Gospel of John. There's a joke among clergy that each of us has only a few messages. Many say only 3, and that all our sermons revolve around those few basic messages. When I first heard it, early in my seminary time, I was determined that that couldn't possibly be true of anyone who was going to take their call to preaching seriously. But here I am, only a few years into my own time as a pastor, and I have to admit, there are some very repetitious themes in my collection of sermons. After living into this passage about the Good Shepherd, as I attempted to be the good, or at least not terribly bad grandmother these past few days, I see that Jesus had only a few themes too. He preached on love, faith, and unity. No dogma, no doctrine, just 3 key things. Loving God, self, and others completely, trusting God completely, and continually reaching out to bring more and more people into unity with all of us. And there's the catch. Continuously reaching out. That's just one of the ways I don't measure up to the Good Shepherd. I get very comfortable with my own circle of people. The truth is, I don't get excited about meeting new people. I don't start from an attitude of, hooray, I get to attempt to make new friends today. I start from dread and discomfort at being around unfamiliar people, especially if I also will be in unfamiliar surroundings. That's not the best starting point for someone whose shepherd has asked her, or rather mandated her, to be someone who is an ambassador of God's love to the entire world. So for me, part of being a good sheep to my awesome shepherd is being willing to stretch beyond my comfort zone to include sharing some of the love I receive without limit with others. For me to be a faithful follower of Christ means moving beyond the boundaries of the very safe fold I am comfortable in, out into the frightening world of unknown people, while somehow allowing my light to shine so that I, even in my discomfort, can still function as a beacon of God's love. This week, there's some very important stuff happening on the political front and in the halls of justice that will make statements about who is and who is not welcome in the fold in our state and in our nation. In Michigan, our Senate will be hearing testimony on a set of 3 bills already passed by the House, which will allow tax funding for faith-based adoption and foster care agencies while giving them permission to discriminate against people based on the religious convictions of the organization. There are some so-called protections included in the bills, like the agencies will be required to refer rejected adults and presumably rejected children to other agencies. But as a person who attempted to adopt and ran into roadblocks with 3 different agencies, I can tell you that the path to adoption is not easy, is not straight, and that the money doesn't transfer from one agency to the next. Each has their own fees which must be paid, regardless of whether they choose to place a child with you or not. And you don't get the no thank you until the fees are paid. So now, our elected officials in this fine state are seriously considering making the process even more difficult for potential parents by sanctioning discrimination by those agencies who already receive roughly half of the funds paid out annually for adoption and foster care by our state. When all the fancy wording is stripped away, The bills are designed to allow agencies to refuse to place children with gays and lesbians. But their language is vague enough that the discrimination can be expanded to include all kinds of people: divorced people, single adults, anyone who could be excluded based upon a religiously declared rule. They claim these bills protect children. I'm sorry, but I fail to see how a child is protected by limiting the pool of potential parents when there are more than 13,000 kids in Michigan waiting for permanent homes. So I've been emailing my senators and our governor, pleading with them to reject this passage of bills. Meanwhile, on the very same day as our Senate will hear testimony on those bills, our Supreme Court will listen to arguments in the landmark marriage equality cases. The court will decide whether our constitutional guarantees of equality for all means all, or means all the people who conform to our standards for who is actually part of all and who is other. The thing is, for me, this is simple. Regardless of whether I choose to believe people are created with gender and sexuality differences, or whether I choose to believe they decided not to be conforming cisgender heterosexuals, this unity piece Jesus spoke about comes into play. If Jesus wants all the people to be part of the fold, do we get to say some of them are less valuable than others? Do we get to say some can come in, but they need to know their place? Can we demand that all people pay their fair share of taxes and follow all our laws, while refusing to give all people full benefits of citizenship? I think if we're going to make a statement as a nation that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we better be living up to that word all. So as a faithful sheep of the Good Shepherd, I'm doing what I can to reach out to intimidating elected officials and powerful chief justices, imploring them to make decisions that honor unity and equality. And I'm working on my good grandmother attitude toward the precious children entrusted to my care. My prayer is that the love of Christ shines through me in all the areas of my life. May we all be good sheep to our amazing, wonderful, awesome Good Shepherd, following his example of love, faith, and unity as we reach out to others, welcoming them into the safety of his hold. May we follow our leader by leading others home to his love. Amen.